All right, we are back. Welcome to post booster, hopefully post booster, Chris. Post booster advent of code. Oof. I did end up finishing day 18 off stream. I did not do day 19. I think we're going to do day 20 today. So we're just gonna skip what day 19 was for now. And then we'll get back to it. Maybe we'll do 19 before Advent of Code ends. Maybe I'll do an extra stream at the end. We'll find out. Let's make this bigger. So I just want to show you the monstrosity that day 18 turned into before we get started. So if we cargo nightly test, you can see all the tests pass, all 23 of them, which is how many I needed to write to actually get this to work. And then, oh boy, the implementation. So there's a couple things I actually do want to point out in the implementation of day 18 before we move on, because they're interesting. So basically, let's see if we can get, can I get one of these to fail maybe? Okay, so in any case, day 18, if you don't remember, was the snailfish day. The snailfish day gave us a number and a fish. We built a snailfish struct to do it. I did... Really curious about your approach to day 19 will be when you get there. I think we're going to stick 19 on the end of the Advent of Code streams. That's what I'm thinking right now. Yeah, that feels right. We'll just say I missed Sunday. Okay, so I have a couple of impls here. Impl for snailfish. So we have display. Display is what comes up when you do print line. So if I do print line macro, like this default formatter, and then like a snailfish, this uses the display formatter. So what that means is it'll call out to this display implementation and run this function. What this function does is if it's a number, it just prints out the number. If it's a fish, it writes out open bracket, and then delegates to the next fish, comma, delegates to the next fish, close bracket. So what we end up with is a snailfish display implementation that just prints out the same thing that you would get in the input. So the printout looks like one of these lines, which is really nice and was really great for debugging purposes. The other two, I think there's only two more that I want to talk about. There's the add impl and the sum impl. So the add implementation we did see on stream. It is the how we concatenated to, or like added two fish together, which meant that we could, in our tests way down here, let's do space plus space and try to find one. Yeah, so right here we have like the accumulated fish plus another fish. Makes it really clean, makes it like very semantic in a sense, like, hey, we're adding two snailfish together. Works out really well. And then we have sum. Sum is really interesting because you implement sum of snailfish for snailfish, and the snailfish in the sum type argument right here is the item in this iterator, basically, right? So in this case, I'm printing stuff out and whatnot, but we do a reduce on some iterator that gets passed in. So this I is an iterator where the items in the iterator are snailfish. And we reduce over that. So we get the first snailfish and the second, which lets us use the addition that we defined earlier. And then we can reduce it all the way to like the reduced snailfish. And that's some just debugging code. So we can ignore that part. Well, what that lets us do for the answers. So this is 1,000 lines of Rust. This file is 1,000 lines of Rust. About half of it is code and about half of it is, or maybe a little bit more than half now. Like 600 lines is code and 400 lines are tests. But the answers that we get out of writing all of these implementations of stuff is that we get the input. Remember, the input is just a list of snailfish. We do lines on the input. We map over that to use our snailfish parser, so we get an actual snailfish struct out of it. And then we use .sum. And that's it for part one. We just .sum on all the snailfish. It makes the answers, like the answers here are like, what, 10 lines well formatted and 6 lines well formatted. Like, they're really easy. Or they're really, not easy is the wrong word. They're really high level is the way that I'll put it, right? Parse the snailfish, sum them up, and we're done. And then magnitude just gets the magnitude. It doesn't really matter that much. And then the part two was to get the maximum of any 2 snailfish. So it's exactly the same thing, except they use Cartesian product instead of sum. Wow, that was really loud. So that was super cool. This code is up on GitHub. Did I change something just then? What did I change? Oh, I added a new line. We'll just stash that. We don't care about new lines. So on to day 20. Totally makes sense. Hey everyone, hope you're good. Dad got booster 2 today. I think it'll be well into the new year before it's my turn. Yeah. It was okay. It was just really hard to function. You know, like you could see me on stream, I'm sure, the other day, doing the snailfish one. And like the snailfish solution wasn't a bad way to go about it. It definitely wasn't the way they wanted me to do it. So I was going against the grain there. But it was like, you saw me struggling on the stream for sure. Woof, couldn't figure out why my input wouldn't parse today. Accidentally used the streaming version of one of instead of the complete version. Yes, it is important to be aware of which parser you're using or which kind of parser you're using. Because one will return incomplete and one will fail. Get rid of all of this. All of this. Get a nice, clean, not 600 lines of tests file to do our work in. Let's do that. That sounds great. We'll get rid of box patterns. We did use box patterns pretty extensively. I think going back, I would still use I would use Nightly for constructing the boxes as well. I think it cleaned up the code quite a bit. The syntax really, I liked it, especially in the destructuring and stuff. I have no Chrome window open here. We need a Chrome window. Hello, Chrome. Advent of Code 2021. Day 20. With the scanners fully deployed, I assume scanners is yesterday's problem. When you get back to the image, interestingly, the one of streaming returns incomplete. The complete one works correctly using it inside separated list. Is it separated list 0 or separated list 1 there? Because it looks like to me, if you're parsing, if you're one of, which I assume is just a dot or a hash, right? If you're one of is dot or hash, and it gets to the end, you will have successfully parsed and separated list. There's no separator here, unless you're separating with 2 new lines, which doesn't sound right either. Separated list single new line is probably what you're doing here, actually. Okay, so we have this input, which I assume is our test input. This is probably, I need to make this bigger. The first section is the image enhancement algorithm. It's normally given on a single line, but is in wrapped I hate when they do this. Okay, so it's going to be a single line, but in the test input, it's not a single line. The second section is the input image, a two-dimensional grid of light pixels and dark pixels. It's going to be one of those expanding grid questions, isn't it? The image enhancement algorithm describes how to enhance an image by simultaneously converting all pixels in the input image into an output image. Each pixel of the output image is determined by looking at a 3x3 square of pixels centered on the corresponding input image pixel. So to determine the value of the pixel at 510 and the output image, 9 pixels from the input image need to be considered. 49, 410, 411, 59, 510, 511. These read out like heights. Like you've just got a bunch of people stacked together. These 9 input pixels are combined into a single binary number that is used as an index in the image enhancement algorithm string. For example, to determine the output pixel that corresponds to the very middle pixel of the input image, the 9 pixels marked by ... would need to be considered. Why are... Oh, marked by the brackets, so just the center there. Starting from the top left, and reading across each row, these pixels are ... then hash ... then hash . Combining these forms, is that the end of the sentence? That's not a grammatically correct English sentence, is it? It's like semicolon, combining these forms, and then just like stops. By turning dark pixels into 0 and light pixels into 1, the binary number can be formed, which is 34 in decimal. Tons of things we've done already in Advent of Code. The image enhancement algorithm string is exactly 512 characters long, enough to match every possible 9-bit binary number. The first few characters of the string, numbered strings starting from 0, are as follows. So you pick the character index in the enhancement. In the middle of the first group of characters, the character index 34 can be found. So the output pixel in the center of the output image should be hash, a light pixel. This process can then be repeated to calculate every pixel of the output image. Images are infinite in size. Every pixel of the infinite output image needs to be calculated exactly based on the relevant pixels of the input image. The small input image you have is only a small region of the actual infinite input image. The rest of the input image consists of dark pixels. For the purposes of this example, to save on space, only a portion of the infinite sized input and output images will be shown. So I'm leaning towards storing points in a hash map. Because if we store points in a hash map and they don't exist, then they're dot. If we store points in a hash map and they do exist, then they're either dot or hash. And then we can just do, it's not as clean as doing like an ND array windows or something like that. But I think that this is going to grow in such a way that it probably doesn't make sense to calculate all of the other ones. And then we need to do an impl display to print the whole thing out. And we'll just have to like cover for the fact that we don't have the other pixels stored. Although, now that I think about it, this is going to have to grow, right? So like, where's this image? So we've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And that means that this pixel right here is going to be dot 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 1 dot, which is 2. So are these the same height right now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is when this one starts. 3, 4, 5. So it does go upward, which means theoretically it would go negative. I actually don't think that's a problem. We just have to account for the fact that there will be negative numbers in the indexes. And then, yeah, I think that's okay. I think we can just go negative. We do the hash map approach. So we store points in a hash map. The points in the hash map are basically, we only need to store the hashes, but I don't know that I'll care to delete them. Maybe I'll filter for just the hashes. That would be interesting. That's what I usually did for these things, but not today though. I did the 2D array thing today. With the 2D array approach, you would be generating a second new array. And is it deterministic? Can it only expand one? I guess it can only expand by one in each direction each time, right? So if we end up with this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we end up with a 6 by 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 by 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we end up with a 9 by 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we end up with a, yeah, I don't know. That seems like it could be useful, right? Because then the Windows works. Do you want the answer to that question that's kind of the twist today? Sure. Yeah. Why not? I think we've covered both of the answers that we could possibly do. Expanding it in the part 1 expands by 2 each time. So we could do multiple 2D arrays, which would work. We could also do the hash map, which in my mind probably makes more sense. But if we do the 2D array, we get to just add a padding and do Windows, and Windows is really nice. Every odd step, there are an infinite amount of lights on. Can you Windows this? Because Windows wouldn't give you an index. Yes, we could Windows this because if we Windows to this, we would end up with a single line of all of the new values, right? So if we did, let's look at this one up here. So if we did this one, right, and we had it as like a 5 by 5, and when we did the window as what, +1 right now, so then we target, we need to do +1 to get these, so we need to window across +1, which means we need to do +2 for any given padding. So if we do +2 for any given padding, then we start with this pixel for the window, right? And it's these 3. And then we move across and it's these 3. Then we move across and it's these 3. Right? So then we end up with a single vec with all the numbers in it. And then we can just do vec from shape vec, or 2D array from shape vec to create the new one, because we know how big it is. We still need to pad it after that, though. The padding is interesting. How would we add the padding as we're iterating over this? it feels almost like we would need to pre-predict the size. Yeah, I think Windows is not parallelized. So if we did ND array and we did Windows, window producer and Windows. This page is so long filled with documentation that it takes a while to load. Windows. Return a window producer and iterable. Windows are all distinct, overlapping. No elements. If it's larger, the produced element is an array view. Yeah, so I think it's deterministic that it goes across and then down one and across, and down one and across. At least that's what they show here. And that's the way it's worked in the other ways that we've used it. So that would work. The only thing that I can think of is padding. Oh, they use unwrap everywhere. It would be really nice if there was a way to like auto put more values around, like grow an array. If we could grow an array, that would be really nice, right? Because then we can just grow by 2 each time and then windows over it. I know some of the non-parallel functions in ND array are non-deterministic because of how they get the memory. That's interesting to know. I guess I'm not super surprised by that. What about that concatenate function from the other day? Concatenate would be for 2 different arrays, right? So this is concatenate along a given axis. I guess that would work, right? If we concatenated padding, matrix padding, and then padding, matrix padding on the other axis. So we would have to do 2 concatenates along a specific axis. Or actually, we would have to do 2 concatenates for each direction, but we would have to do 2 along one axis and 2 along another axis, and that would be our padding. That would work. We would end up creating a bunch of arrays. I think that's fine. So let's do the ND array. I hate that this is face unlocked. Why is it face unlocked? I just want to look at it. Okay, I think that ND array is interesting. We do need to parse this in. This needs to parse in as a single. Let's look at the input because this is going to be one long thing, right? So if I make this window smaller, yeah, cool. So let's start with parsing the input. Make sure that we have the right things in the right places and stuff. And then we'll go from there. So let's do function puzzle input. We're going to take a string slice as usual. We're going to return a usize for now, just as a placeholder. And then we are going to put the test input in the test input file before I forget that I have it on my paste bin. So it looks like this in the actual input. So we've got one of this or that. I guess, do we store these as ones and zeros? Probably makes the most sense, right? let input, what did we call this? This is the image enhancement algorithm. Enhancement. Equals, well, let's do this. Let's do let input, and then we'll get algo and image equals separated list one. And this is going to be new lines, which I will function new lines input string slice, returns unit because we don't get anything, but input throwaway equal new line input, and then the same thing, and then we just okay input units. And this is actually result string slice unit. So that should work. And then I guess it's one, two, yeah, it's two new lines. And then this is many one. I guess we could do one of. Probably makes the most sense. The other thing we could do is alt. But this seems to make the most sense. This is iResult. We need to put a different return type on this so that it actually works. And then I'll just put unit down here. Let's see, separated list one, new lines, many one of, and then this needs input on the end, which I always forget. Actually, you know what I'm thinking of? This needs to be separated pair, right? And then it's, see if I can remember which key to press. Then it's many one of this, and then image and fn image takes the input, which is a string slice, iResult, string slice, and then I'll make it a vex for the moment, right? And we'll change that to a 2D array before we're done. And then the image is going to be let input. I guess this is still going to be, this doesn't even need to be its whole own thing. This is just going to be image equals separated list one, new line, and one of hash dot on the input with the return type. And then we're going to OK for now and just do input image. And then this return type is algo image. So this up here is a tuple of a vec of string slices and a vec of string slices. Oh, that's a vec of cars. Separated list, new line, many one of. And now we get the vec of cars. And then this needs to be okay in with the tuple input and the results. And that should be... What's wrong with that? There's something wrong with that. Input, algo, image. Expected string slice found car. Is algo a vec of cars? Same thing as the other one, so yeah. Okay, so that works, as far as I know anyway. I guess we also really don't need to make the algo a vec. Hey Jacob, how's it going? The algo here, I think for a future optimization, we don't actually parse this in as a vec to avoid allocating. Instead, what we do is we take until new line, and then we index into this string, maybe. So maybe I'll do that later. I don't think it's a big deal. We're only allocating this vec once. So yeah, let we throw away the input, and then we get algo image equals puzzle input. Is a bit over abstracted, but it's okay. Kind of doing this for showing things off and learning purposes. So this is a question mark, algo image puzzle input. Oh right, I need to unwrap this. Let's just say expect input to be valid. So expect and unwrap do the same thing. They both panic. We've kind of gone over this before, but expect lets you give a message and say, hey, you know, like this should panic, and we expect it to panic if anything goes wrong. Whereas unwrap will just like panic, and you'll be like, ah, did we mean to unwrap here? That kind of thing. Cool. So we should have this now. Algo image. Just debug that out for a second. We'll start up the test. What does the test actually need to be? It needs to be an image printout or something, right? "35 pixels are lit." So that's the thing. We just count how many pixels are lit, which means we need to have our process algorithm now. So let's do the ND array stuff. We've already written the ND array stuff, so I'm gonna go grab it from our old code. We could try to just write it again, but I do think that it is super useful to show that going back and grabbing old code from other projects and things like that. If you're like, hey, I've written this before, I know it works, I'm gonna go grab it. And that is super okay, in my opinion. So this image is going to be the 2D array. We already have the vec. This is in outputs. This is, let's do raw input here. And this and this. And this is trying to pad it automatically, but I think we're not going to use the padding code that we had here. We are going to use something else. We're going to use the we do need to flatten this, so we'll do raw input.flatten or something like that. Shape vec, we don't need to do +2 because we aren't padding it right now. We need to iter to flatten. So I can actually do this and just drop this in right here. And this should give us the, unless I messed something up, which it looks like I did, actually. What did I mess up? That's the big question. As is ever the big question in programming. What did I mess up? Expected vec found struct flattened because I didn't collect. Value of type vet car cannot be built from reference to car. That is totally acceptable. We're just going to into iter, grab some ownership over those cars. And this is now an array base, which totally makes sense because this is an array to car. This is starting to look a little small. I think I changed all my settings. Expected found array base here. This is also going to be a array to car. Right? And then we want to pad this. So we want to do it on the first axis and then the second axis. So we probably what we want is a pad array function of some kind that takes a reference to, let's go with original as a reference to an array to car and returns an array to car, right? So we get this array in and we want to pad both sides of it basically. So if we get, one of the questions I have is the input always locked to having data on all sides? So let me go check our puzzle input and make sure that there is, it looks like this is locked to having data everywhere, which is super useful for us because it means that this, whatever it's called, this can be padded in +2 in each direction. So we need to create an R1 from a vec, right? Where all of the values are dot and its original length of axis 0, right? Is R1 not a thing, or did I just not have it imported? Array 2? This isn't an array 2 though. I guess it's a single row array 2. Is that what you're saying? That we need to have. I think we only need to have the same axis and we can concatenate them. I don't think this needs to be an array 2. Right? I guess it's an array, so if we don't do an array 2, we'll have to bring them down into some kind of view. So we probably do want R2 just to make it easy. I think you're right. I think strictly speaking, we don't necessarily need R2. More that there's a method to create an array from a single element. What? Is that what R2 is? Oh. You mean the type array too? You want me to look for from element? From LM, maybe? Yeah. Let's wait for the page to load, because there's so much documentation. Create an array with copies of LM shape. Array from LM 222 1 dot. Cool. We could definitely do that. This is going to be an array 2 from LM. This is going to be... Now here's the real question. Which one is the rows and which one is the columns? I'm not even going to think about it. I'm just going to do axis 0. So this is the 0, 1 should be it here, right? So if we pad axis 1 with this, we should be able to do, what's the concatenate? So we can now do concatenate axis 1 because we've defined the other axis, right? Is pad axis 1 dot view. Or actually, this isn't pad. This is yeah, it is. It is pad. And then original. Right. And then we basically do the same thing again for the other axis. So this is 0, 1. This is 1. This is dot. This is axis 0. And then we do the same thing. And then these need to be... I think that's it, right? Actually, we don't need to specify the exact length. We just need to return padded axis 0 now. Interestingly, if you use macro, it will call the view for you. Yes. I use macros when they are very useful. And I try to avoid macros being scattered throughout my code because they are kind of magical. You'll notice that if you look at older documentation for NOM, if you've been following the advent of code stuff, NOM used to have a very macro heavy API. And in cases like that, what macros are doing is basically papering over some stuff in the Rust ecosystem that might be tedious to write or hard to get right or something like that. And it uses those macros as the basis of that API, right? Which is great and fine, and I love that it exists. But if you have the function option, the function option is more clearly defined. It usually has better error propagation. Sometimes people, when they're writing macros, will forget to actually propagate the errors through to point at the right line of code. So it'll just kind of like swallow errors. And for kind of all of those reasons, macros add a level of complexity to debugging and the code in general, because they can do more, right? You can do a lot more with a macro than you can with a function. And that's the reason they exist. But what it means is that you incur that complexity when reading the code. Okay, we have a couple of issues here. This is a result, so we need to unwrap because it should always work. This is the same, so we'll unwrap that because it should always work. I think it increases build times, Rust Analyzer processing too. Yes, if you write a bunch of macros and you nest a bunch of macros, Rust Analyzer, like determining how deep to so what Rust Analyzer does is it like basically reads your code and points back and says, hey, you should do this here, or like this is a problem in that place, right? When you have macros can almost do arbitrary things, so it's unclear as to how deep you should like unwrap the macros and which piece of code you should point to for the error in something like Rust Analyzer. So it makes Rust Analyzer's job much harder because of that level of basically you have like Babel plugins or AST manipulations, and those AST manipulations can be basically arbitrary. So if there's a problem in one of them, what does it point to and what does it show you what to do? Can you even change anything inside the macro? Exactly like that kind of thing. Padded axis 1. So in image here, we get the raw image, right? And then I think we'll take the raw image and we'll do the padding when we process. So let's do like a call to process here. And we'll pass in the image. And then the process function will take an image, which is a reference to an array 2, car. And we will immediately, what's the name of this function? What did I call it? Pad array. Right, we'll pad array image. We'll have padded image here. I don't think we need this again, so it doesn't matter that I think it takes ownership. It doesn't take ownership, perfect. So we have padded image here. Can we just cargo test for the moment? Shape error, incompatible shape. 56. Did I mess this up? Do I need to do 0, 0, and 1, 1? Get rid of that. Run this. Incompatible shapes. What am I doing wrong here? Let me switch this back to the way I had it. Let me debug pad axis 1 and also original. And this is a reference. So pad axis 1 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 5, 1. And this is 5, 5. And then this works then, right? Pad did axis 1. So the one that's failing is 58. And we are adding dots to the sides. Which means that here, I can grab this quickly and do this. And this is going to be pad axis 0 and padded axis 0, or what is it? 1? Borrowed after moved. Okay, so we end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7, 1, and this is 5, 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So it should work if we line it up correctly. Pad axis 0 needs to be 1. Oh, you're absolutely right. Yep, that was exactly it. We were basically constructing the padding array in the wrong direction. Needed to be 1, 7 instead of 7, 1. Makes sense. Okay, so we have our padded image. So now we can do padded image dot windows 3, right? Dot map lms. Let's just debug lms just to see what we're getting. I think we're going to be able to inspect and then collect. Right, and then we'll collect this into a vec of cars. Hopefully we can collect that into an array. That would be really nice. This is 3, 3. Apparently inspect can't be called on that. Interesting. We're going to into iter this, apparently. So into iter is something that I know is on the array twos. I don't quite understand why we need to into iter here. I feel like map should be on this Windows struct, but from experience, I know that that won't work. So we'll move forward and I'll go back later and figure out why exactly that is and see if I can clean that up a little bit. This is an array-based view repr car. Can we do an array too? I don't think we're going to be able to do that, right? View repr and car dim usize 2. So can we oh right, here's the thing. I'm going to do a vec of unit for the moment because we aren't even done with this yet. I'm going to map over this just to get the units. And then we get our things here, which is great. What is this? This is lems.iter.map. Item, or match item. Match item. I don't want to add this closures return type. No, that's not what I want. I want either hash, which is a 1, or a dot, which is a 0, or a whatever, which is a panic because input wasn't correct. Right? And then because we map over this, we can dot collect into a string that we own. String num, and then we do usize from this is from string radix, string num, and then radix 2. This is the number. This needs to be a reference, right? No, it does not need to be a reference. Is it already a reference? It needs to be a dereference. That's what I get for guessing. The compiler would just tell me this needs to be a 0. And not found in this scope string num because that's the wrong place to put that. That makes sense. Thank you, Rust compiler. And now we get the reference issues. So now we get from string radix num. And then padded image will be this number, but we have to index into the algo, right? So we need the algo here, which is going to be a reference to a vec of cars. We're going to match on algo.get num. If we have something, which we expect, I guess we can just expect here. That makes it easier. Expect a valid index. And we can just return this now. I thought this was going to be usize. We're going to need to pass in algo here, so I'll just do that down here because that's an easy fix. And then slice indices are of type usize or ranges of usize. That is what we have here, right? We have a usize. Oh, parse int error. Expect a valid parse. If this doesn't parse, then we're in big trouble. Veccar. Doesn't really matter to me right now. Okay, so we end up with a thing that does nothing at the moment. But this padded image, right, will be less the padding on... Actually, we need to pad it with 2 of them, don't we? Now that I think about it. If we only pad it with 1 and we do 3 by 3, no, we're good there. If we only pad it with 1 and we do 3 by 3, then we get the corner and we start in the top left, but we need to start in the top left. So we do need to pad it again, actually. So where's our padding? We need double padding on both sides. Because the point of Windows is to get us the 1 extended. So if we pad it like that and we do 3, 3, then we start in the top left, not the top left of our image, but the top left to the top left of our image, right? We start at effectively -1, -1. Which is where we want to start, because we can expand at most 1 out. So if we do that, what we end up with is a single vec with a length equal to the padded image -2 in each direction, right? Here's a question. Can we just add the array 2 and the dim to this? Can we do like this, right? And then this doesn't give us the rows and columns counts though, does it? So I don't think we can collect here. So we do have to do the from shape vec. And this will have to succeed. And this will be what? Padded image dot length of axis 0 -2. And I'm literally using axis 0 and 1 here because I can't for the life of me keep track of which one is supposed to be a row and which one is supposed to be a column. So if I just deal with axis 0 and axis 1, it makes a lot more sense in my head. And I can just say, this is always 0, that's always 1. No problem. From shapevec, that's not the right signature for it though, is it? from shapevec whenever it decides to. There we go. Shape and a vec. That should be good. And then expected unit found array base, because I said that this was returning a unit, didn't I? Or more accurately, I didn't specify that it was returning anything. And as a result, it assumed that I was returning unit, which I am not. This is car reference. I don't love that I have to do this. I don't really want these to live forever. We only need a reference here, but for this, let's do cloned. And we'll just return the cars. Because I kind of just want to make the rest of it easier rather than tracking lifetimes through everything. You can always go back and add the lifetimes in. It's never a problem. Okay, so process, image, algo, returns us a new image. We debug the new image. Then what we get is this. And if I write instead a function called print image, which takes a array to car, I want this to be, what do I want this to be? I want this to be, I'm trying to think of the thing that I need to iterate over. So input dot iter axis 0, right? I don't want to iter a specific axis chunks iter? No, axis iter. Yes. For list in this list dot iter for C in list dot iter print C, and then print new line, and these need to be the macro, and this can take a reference because we don't care. And instead of debug new image, I'm going to print the image. This is not a macro. And that should give us this. Nice little output. And let's check it against what we should have gotten for step 2. Looks right to me. Dot, 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 dot. 1. 1, 4, corner. Yep. Looks good to me. How many times do we need to do this? Twice? What tells... What do you think that we have to do this another 15 bajillion times? That sounds like part 2, right? So puzzle input, expect, new image. We have a new image. And then we can just process this again. And this should give us the output. And if we take new image, well, you know, we have to like specify the thing first, but we take new image and we return new image dot iter dot filter v match. For this, we get 1. Actually, we don't need to filter. We could also map. I'm going to filter though. Anything else is false. Let me count. And the problem here is that I committed syntax error crimes. Part 2 is do this 50 times. Yes, we already wrote it so that we can do it 50 times, but let's go grab our input. I am not super surprised that it was do it 50 times. And I'm hoping mostly that it's not one of the do it 50 times. Oh, by the way we explain this problem actually means that you can't do it the way you did part 1. That's what I'm hoping. And we get this wonderful image for part 1. That's not the right answer because we didn't do the right number of iterations, did we? Too high. Yay. So let's make sure that our second step here works. Yeah, we do 2 iterations, Commander. Also, so you joined Discord. Welcome. Let me make sure that this is correct. Let's do it in the test. Make this 34 for whatever reason. And let's compare this here to how tightly is this packed? This is tightly packed to the edge. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, not 4. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That doesn't look right. Hang on. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. So this is wrong for whatever reason. That top hash is wrong. It's only the top one though, which is, as you know, what I love about Advent of Code. To the right of that. That's not good. Yo, that's not good. Let's check the output of the first iteration. Which one? They look identical to me? The top row. So this one, you see this hash right here is all the way on the right. This hash right here is in the middle. Actually, I just miscopied that, didn't I? Yes, I miscopied that. Because it would have been 1, 2, 3, which is the right spot. So they're identical, which is great because our test input still, or our actual input still fails. Wonderful. Super exciting. Very hyped about that. This is another one of those where like I don't even know how to debug this. Because like our test input passes and looks perfectly fine. And then the actual input fails. This is one of those things where like it's a huge pain to just go through and be like, ah, yes, let me check this individual character. And let me check this individual character. And let me check this individual character. When they legitimately could have just been like, hey, here are the steps. Dang. So now what? I think that's the only way forward, right? Unless I like noticed something or whatever. What's okay, so let's just look at the puzzle input then, and let's see what is the what's so different about the puzzle input. Well, oh, I realize what's so different about the puzzle input now, actually. Well, no, that's not true. If we go out 2 to each side, we should get everything. Yes, the test passes, the real input does not. We get no errors. No indication that anything's wrong. Check what 9 unlit pixels map into. Should 0, right? It should be unlit into 0, which is whatever the 0 input is. Hash in that one, isn't it? Wait, if 9 unlit pixels map into hash, then doesn't the entire map infinitely switch to hashes? That's fucked up. Now check the 9 unlit pixels. I mean, I know it's wrong, right? It's wrong because it's not wrong because of what 9 unlit pixels map into. It's wrong because when we pad with the dot and not the 0 value. So we're given an image, right? And on the first iteration, everything outside of scope needs to map into 0. But we don't do that. We do dot. So let's do this. Let's do, because the original one is dot. So we have to do, where's our actual function? Pad array image. Why is pad array image now complaining? 2 arguments. So process. So when this happens, my question is, we do need to go around even wider on the first pass, don't we? For the windows. We need to basically draw the edge. That the example input and the real input differ in this is exceedingly frustrating. Yes. I don't think that just changing this character is going to be enough. I think we actually need to pad bigger on the first time. The fact that they're like, here's the input, and then it flips to a completely different input basically is super annoying. And the fact that they hid that in the actual input and didn't give test cases for it is even more annoying. The image itself gets bigger in 2 in every direction. So we pad it with 2. What I'm saying is that if we pad it with 2, we're not actually operating on the second one out. And I think we actually need to operate on the second one out. So for the first pass, we're going to pad it with 3, I think. The question, okay, oh, you know what's really, really bizarre? If that's true, and thus the infinite paper is all infinitely 0, you know what that means, right? It would mean that everything is turned on, which means that this is infinite. So that can't be true. So it's not infinitely turned on. They want us to process a very specific segment of this. So we're already doing this. So I think so when we pad, the big question I have is when we pad, what do we pad with? Right? What are we supposed to pad with here? And just testing to see what actually happens currently doesn't change things. Even if it's infinitely turned on, everything sufficiently far away should be stable. It's saying that we only need to process the image, though, right? Like, we only need to center on this one and process that one. But it expands. So all of this is just arbitrary padding that they added that doesn't matter, that shouldn't be there, right? So they're hinging on the fact that you're processing what? Three out? Like that you chose just an arbitrarily right number to do here? So if we do car here, instead of 0 car, because this is always going to be dot still. And we can't go too far because otherwise we would turn everything on. Right, but if we only process... So if we only process this pixel, right, then it can't get bigger. So we don't only process this pixel, we process this pixel and pixels around it, right? Because this is turned on, therefore this is what, 1? Whatever 1 is goes there. So to determine the value of the pixel at 510 in the output image, 9 pixels from the input image need to be considered. These 9. Yes. The 9 pixels are combined into a single binary number that is used as the index in the image enhancement algorithm string. So do we do what we're doing, and then we have to chop the array back down to only the values that exist? Right? Are we making it too big, basically, is my question? What if I run this? Did I print out the other one? I think that's going to be the answer, or that's going to be the bug. Print image, print image. For these, we're fine, because they only ever go out one. But for the actual input, run bin part 1. There's this. Expand by 2. This isn't actually the printout I want. The printout I want is not these. But the version before we chop. So I want this here without the -2s. And these can be references. And then we clone this because it's being used as a source for the array, and yada yada. And the trait dimension implemented is not implemented for references to usize because this, which means out of bounds indexing. I guess this inherently only builds the ones that we've processed, right? So we've got Windows 3.3. I'm so confused as to what they want me to do here. Because they're like, it's infinite dots. Only process the ones that you have. But if you only process the ones that you have, it will never grow. So you need to process outside of that. So what's the piece of it that I'm missing? Can you show me where you add the values of the surrounding pixels? Yeah, it's right here. So in pad array, we get a padded image. And that image is basically just, that's not the right function. The image is basically just padded twice on each side. Because like we can't do this, right? Because this returned the wrong answer earlier. padded, padded. And this would be what, -1 or something? Then we get the wrong answer for this test, right? Yeah, we get 14. We can't do these indexes like this. We have to do 2. From shapevec. 138 is out of bounds. Too long, shrink it? I don't know what you mean by that. If we're padded by 1, then we have the size of the original image, right? So if I copy this and I comment it out and I do this instead, and this is not padded image, it's just image. That's not possible though, because it has to be +1, right? We're not processing enough stuff. So I'm just gonna, I don't know, do another one here because people are saying that 3 works. I don't understand why though. This is my problem right now. And then down here, this is -2. So maybe we just do the same thing for a second and see what happens. So that works. Wasn't our number too high before though? Wish I could. Can I go back? Yeah. Yeah, our number was too high before. So we need to lock it in further. We don't need to expand it more. This is the index in the lookup table. I'm gonna screenshot this so I have it. Being careful to account for the thing that we didn't tell you how it works. Wonderful. And doesn't exist in any of the test data. How many pixels are lit in the resulting image? It's really, really annoying that this works on the test stuff and doesn't work on the actual input. I don't understand what you're trying to say here, Commander. Like, yes, the first line is a lookup table, but that doesn't change anything. Like, the lookup table isn't the problem at the moment. far as I know. You're talking about like parsing the input in? We already parsed the input in correctly because we already get the correct answer for the test. Yeah, the test already works, Commander, if you're coming in late. Um, the test works, all of the code works, everything works. And then we go to the actual input, and the actual input fails because there's some requirement in the actual input that doesn't exist in the problem explanation or the test input. That's the problem right now. So trying to figure out what that is and then fix it. I mean, we could just expand it. Right? I've modified some things, Commander, but yeah, it works for this. See, 35 comes out. Think of that. Yeah, I mean, the test input works. What's there to think about? The image expands clearly, but it doesn't actually tell us how many pixels to process away. And if we process too far away, then everything in the entire world turns on, right? Because 0 in the test input is hash. Right. Like, I totally get that, Nikki, but like, the implication of that is that everything in the world turns on after the first step. There are no pixels out of range, Commander. We're using window on a 2D array, so there are no. If you mean like out of range of the image itself, the original image, we pad it with 0 values. So we pad it with dots. That's the only other thing that I can think of. So let's try that for a second. Yeah, we actually add 2 0 lines because Windows gives us 3 by 3, and we process the outer ring right outside the image that we're given. Like that pixel turns on if it's hash. And then start processing from 1, 1 to max x minus 1 and max y minus 1 only. We are already doing that. You have to add the values together only if the infinity is set to true. So the thing that gets me here is that like this whole section here on the top right of this example, right? 0 is hash here. So this whole top right section turns on, but so does everything out to infinity beyond that. So I guess after the first padding, we have to pad with that character. So what if we do this? What if we do algo image, right? And this is puzzle input and this is new image, and instead of padding, we pad everything to start with, and we know how big it's going to be, and then we just process that whole thing. Let me get rid of this test. So if it's infinite nothing, pad with empty before running enhance. So the only problem with that, Nikki, is that once you pad it with everything, if you pad it with all hashes, then you have to go for infinity and find what the padding character is, right? If it's 111, 111, 11111, then we look at the input here and it's dot again. So everything outside, everything in the padding, I guess becomes dot after that. And then it flips back to hash, and then it flips back to dot. So we just have to keep doing the lookup. So where is the... So we do something like this, basically. And then process returns this and takes pad car, and pad array is pad array, pad car. Pad array, the 0 car. So we do that, we pad it with whatever. The return type of process isn't actually car, right? because we need to do, what is this? Where's the algo index? We do this, we don't return the pad car. We know what the pad car is. Right, so function new pad car C car do this. We pass the algo in as well. We do string.repeat.collect or something. Let car string equals this. Car string. It's just really deflating to get a problem that doesn't clearly explain what you have to do and doesn't explain what the input is going to be like and doesn't explain or does show what's going to happen. And then you get everything working and then you go to the actual input and you're like, oh, they just didn't tell me what the actual problem was. In the educational stuff that I do, my goal is to never have this happen. Ever. It's such a bad experience. Okay, so the test works. Let's run it. Hopefully we get a low number. Okay, so that works. So we just need to keep looking up 0 for all of the infinity stuff. And now do it 50 times, basically. Dang, you know, they really could have just explained that in the input. So part 2, the test input 50 times is this many. So we grab this problem actually is exactly why I'm pro advent of code in general, but this makes people feel like they're just absolutely incapable. And there's no reason for it at all. Process part 2, puzzle input, for I in 0.50. Right, so we clone this in, we have the new image, we process it, we pass in the pad character gets to be a new pad character. This gets reset. And then when we're done, we check new image. We don't use these ever. So we should be able to cargo test this. So that works. Cargo run bin part 2. Yeah, I think picking a test input that starts with 0 equals off and a problem input with 0 equals on is a really poor choice for giving a representative test input. I think it's just really bad problem design. Like it's basically a cheap trick when it comes down to difficulty. That's not the right answer. Perfect. Perfect. Like when you think about difficulty ramping, there's difficulties like adding a shit ton of health to a boss, right? In a video game. It's just a really unrewarding way to add difficulty, right? Just clicking 500 times more times doesn't make the player feel empowered, right? Or like just auto killing them for whatever reason. Like in the Dead Souls games, like I know a lot of people do play those. And they walk in with the expectation that there's a specific mechanic they're going to have to find and master. But that doesn't make like a good general gaming experience, and it doesn't make an educational one. In the same way, like there are problems in Advent of Code that just require you to write so much. Like the one on Snailfish. The Snailfish one is just like so much stuff that it's like having a boss with a shit ton of health, right? It's not rewarding to have to write hundreds of lines of code to find all the little bits of edge cases as the person writing the program, right? Yes, I did mean Dark Souls, Mickey. I don't remember what I said. but like explaining a level one way, like letting a player learn to play a level one way, and then killing them for like touching the Super Mario power-up mushroom is just not. It's yeah, I have problems with it. What was the actual 19979 is too high. If you're stuck, make sure you're using the full input data, because that's my problem. It's the advent of code problems. So today we're doing day 20. We're into part 2 for day 20. If you're unfamiliar with what advent of code is, it is adventofcode.com. The problems we are doing are the 2021 set of problems, which are the ones that are currently available. So you can see that we've done this for just about 20 days now, minus one. You click on the calendar, you get to here, you can click on the problems. The problems have some wordy like explanation along with some input. And then you use whatever Rust, Excel, SQL, Python, whatever, to parse the input in, do some processing on it, and then return an answer. And that answer goes into a text box on the website. And if you get the correct answer, you get a gold star. Basically a set of puzzle problems. The problem with the one today is that they gave us a bunch of test input, right? And the tests all pass for the test input. But then you go to the actual input that they gave us today, and the actual input isn't related to the test input. So you can write an algorithm that works on the test input and completely fails on the actual input. And that's kind of what we're struggling with right now. So we've got part 2. I just ran part 2. And the test passed, right? I wrote the test, right? Process part 2, 3351. So like our tests passed, both of them. And now we go to the actual, now we go to the actual problem. And when I submitted, it's the wrong answer. So part 2, we're doing the puzzle input. We set our pad character to dot because that's what we start with. We set the new image to the image because that's the one we need to work with. The first step, we process the new image against the algorithm. We pass in the pad character to pad it out. Then we change the pad character based on whatever we have available to us. And we keep going. In the back of my head, I feel like we need to change this. In the back of my head, I feel like we need to change this to actually be the fully zoomed out image to work with, and then pad that too, and then operate on that whole entire thing at the same time. I feel like this zoom out approach is problematic at best. At this point, the problem description just feels condescending. Like, be careful to account for the infinite size of the images. Like I would if you just told me what I needed to do, instead of just being like, ah, yeah, it's infinite. You know what that means, right? This works. Let me do process part 2. Let's use this algorithm on the first part and make sure it works. Let me do the 0.2. So the second test will fail, but the first one should pass. Yeah, first one passes. So we're good there. I haven't made any fundamental changes that break the way it works. This needs to go back to part 1. So our tests pass again, and again our input is wrong. And I'm going to be honest, I don't have any idea how to debug this. We don't have any... Well, let's go back to the other way of doing this and then do 0.2, right? Because it's the same input. So let's do that. Let's do cargo run bin part 2 just to see 5349. So it works for the first input, and it just doesn't work for the second input, is what's happening here. Am I running the right number of steps? 0.2 is 2 steps. 0.50 is 50 steps. So we run part 2, and we get like 19,000. 19,979. When I put that in, it said it was too high. So what's the problem? I might take a break and go get some food and stuff. Unless somebody in chat has a suggestion for how to debug part 2. Yes, part 2 algorithm works for part 1 answer. Just changing the number of steps makes it give the right output. Both tests passed. The part 1 test passes with the part 2 algorithm. The part 1 answer comes back with the part 2 algorithm. The part 2 tests with the part 2 algorithm pass. The part 2 real input with the part 2 algorithm does not. So, I don't know. The only other thing I can think of is maybe... I don't know, maybe we're somehow chopping off data. I got nothing. I don't know. We're passing the padding character. Padding character changes. Set the new padding character. We do it again. Process the image. Padding character changes. Set it again. It's not something silly like this, right? It's not like like this, and then not that. Because I think this will still pass the test, right? Now if we cargo run bin part 2. If this gives us a lower number, then 19979, so it doesn't even matter. Like changing the padding character doesn't even do anything. So yeah, I don't know. Got nothing. Is your image growing on each step or staying the same size? It's growing. Like all of the other tests and all of the other answers pass, Derek, so it has to be growing, right? So we set this up, pass in the algo, set up the pad character. Feels like break time. Yeah, I think I'm going to take a break. I'm going to look at the Reddit thread for the advent of code solutions. Maybe you'll do that before I get off. Just as a quick, like, advent of code, right? Here's one of the Reddit threads for day 13 or something like that. So let's go for advent of code, mega thread, day 20. And I'm just going to look for part 2. Okay. Glad to see that part 2 was straightforward and ran just fine with the solution I had written. Great. Wonderful for you. Code for part 1 also worked for part 2 without any changes. Part 2 didn't cause any issues. Part 2 ran in about 9 seconds. This person did it in Rust. Might as well take a look at that later. His approach was to store the image as a fixed size vector. Each iteration I grow the vector so there's a ring of space around the image. Run the simulation. Grow the vector so there's a ring of space around the image? How do you do that on a vector without inserting into like arbitrary indexes? I tried it with my puzzle data, failed. You tried my part 2 solution with your puzzle data? Is that what you're saying, Commander? Your solution is heavily commented, Nikki. Okay, cool. So you should be able to follow what's going on in my code. No idea why the part 2 gives you problems. I appreciate you running it on your input, Commander. I can't think of... Like, everybody else's part 2 seems fine. So why does mine not work? I've noticed the board expands with 1 cell per side on each iteration, so I've pre-allocated a large enough grid. Yeah, I mean, that was my backup plan, right? To do just the full grid and always process. I think that's the right solution, honestly, because growing it doesn't seem to work. NumPy was so useful for this. It was so easy expanding the matrix versus having to do it manually. So cool that we did that. I'm sure there's a better way to run it in the matrix too after we figure this out. I see other people doing clever NumPy transformations to make part 2 run in under a second. Am I just running too many iterations or something? Is it something silly like that? Like it's not that I'm like just absolutely running 51 instead of 50 because I didn't count right? Here's the question. Is it way too high or is it just too high? 19979. It's not that. Dang, the fact that you can write a solution that works for everything except for the part 2 input is really, 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 really frustrating. Just under 5 seconds for part 2. Can I run your input? Then I can tell you the way too high or a bit too high? Sure. You can run my input. I'll send it to you on Discord. Apparently it wants me to send this as a file and will not let me send it otherwise. There we go. You've got it. I bet you already have this up on your website, don't you? The solver. I'm so confused here. Not yet, or I would have made you do that to answer the question. I forget what I said. This person's padding the dimensions +2, which is exactly what I'm doing. Part 1 answer we have. Yeah, just give me the straight up answer, I think. Because I have no idea how much. I don't... I think I have to write it so that it pre-allocates all of the space that it's going to need. And then that'll give the right answer. So I'm like 4,000 high? Dang. So let me do that before I end, I guess. That shouldn't be too hard. And then we don't actually need to do a pad character, do we? We just do the first pad character and then calculate. Okay, so this process pads. So I think we want to pad first now. Do this near the part 2 function or under the part 2 function. So instead of pad, this is going to be a big pad array. And we need the 0 car, and we need actually we don't need the 0 car, do we? Because it'll always be dot in this scenario if we do the full thing. So this is the original length, and then we do num iters as a U size, and we do how do we concatenate this? Axis 1. We need iterations over 2. Or is it just number of iterations? I think it's number of iterations plus 2. Should be able to make the padding function a function of num iters since it can be a matrix. Yes. So in this case, it'll be 52, right? I had to look at the Reddit Rust solutions. Everyone is doing it in another way. You mean the single vec way, or? You used a bool grid. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's a bool grid or a 2D matrix. Actually, it's not like once they turn off, they never turn on again or something like that, right? Okay, so I need to do a number of these. I could just copy paste them. Original length of axis 0 num iters plus 1. Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. Thank you for that save, actually. So we do that and that then, right? I don't think it's plus 1, though, is it? I guess it is. Yeah, it's plus 1. And this is num iters plus 1. Same thing. So this should give us a nice big padded, like this is the image with one padding around it. So we do need to chomp it down by one at the end. Well, yeah. But the end will be, everything on the outside will be dots anyway. Okay, so we got a big pad. Where's our process part 2? Big pad array. Was big pad array image. $50. Right, and this is going to be a reference. So we create this new grid with the original image padded by num cars. Our process function needs to change because we pad inside of our process function. So here, and then big process, I don't know. Big process, we don't have a pad car anymore because we're not padding. We're just taking the image. 3x3, do the thing, get the stuff, return the vec. And that's just a step, right? This actually shrinks it by 1. So we need to re-add the padding anyway. Right? So we big pad 0. So we get 1 on each side. And these are -1, right? And then we still need to process image 0, which will return us an image that can be processed again. I guess we take this out though. Big process. I'm going to do it up here. So we are in this, and this will be new image. So we don't really need pad car here. We do big process thing, and then big pad array. I know this is a little confusing. I'm just shadowing. So I'm passing in the new image from above here. I'm calling it new image and setting it back to this. Then we're using new image again, and then we're setting it again. So it's a little confusing, but that's what's going on. And then 265 is wrong. This is big process. Big process needs to return this. Out of bounds indexing at 292, which is going to be the what, the -1. Right, image comes in, and then it's the length -2, not the length -1, because there's the padding. Part 2 test demo, left 3351, right 2. So it's grid, it's not that. With any luck, this will pass. Ergo run bin part 2. I think this is good. And hopefully this is the right answer. 17161. Not even the right answer. Should we try it anyway? All right, I'm going to try it anyway. I know it's the wrong answer because Nikki gave me the right one. It's going to be like, you can submit tomorrow sometime. So I don't know what the problem is here. I'm really tired of my tests passing and the part 1 passing and not getting the information I need to build the part 2. Feels like I'm dealing with OAuth or something. Did you check my answer? It could be wrong too, for all I know. I did not check your answer. I don't actually know if it's correct. Last push to get, please. Sure. So this should be padding this out to 50, right? On each side. +1. Which should give us iterating on the entire grid that we already have. I just wanted to look at the ND array things for learning. Yeah, for sure. There's also other ND array stuff in the other days. So like day 9 has ND array. Day, I want to say 11 has ND array. Bunch of stuff like that. So we use it in the other days. Here's a question. If we do this to 2, then we swap the test. It works for part 2. It works for part 1 and part 1's actual. It just doesn't work for part 2's actual. Everything works. There's just something in the input that isn't the same as the rest of the other 3 tests. You know how annoying that is? That's okay. It's time for a break. I'm getting really frustrated by this. Y'all can find me in Discord if you have anything else to say about it. I guess before I end, I will test Nikki's answer just because then we will know. I assume that it's the right answer. 15806 is the right answer. At least then I know what I'm looking for. That is the right answer for sure. Maybe I'll pull Nikki's solution down and I'll print out the grid and see if see where my grid is messing up. That sounds like how I'm going to debug this, actually, since Nikki already has a working solution. And mine only works for 3 out of 4 inputs. Then I think that I'm going to pull Nikki's code. And figure out where mine is going wrong. And then I'll come back tomorrow and tell you. Because honestly, at this point, I have no idea. Padding it out to 50. We're doing all of them. It doesn't work when we're doing this big process one, but it works for the other 3. It doesn't work when we're doing the other one. I don't know. I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense to me that it would work for everything but part 2 actual. There's got to be some small bug somewhere. In any case, I'm going to call it. I need to go get food. And this day definitely frustrated me. So I'm going to go do that. And I set up all the streams for the rest of the Advent of Code problems. We will be streaming. I am back. I missed Sunday because the booster shot decided I needed some sleep. But the other days should work. So it should be good. I'll catch you all tomorrow.